Okay, let's jump in. Have you ever noticed that feeling where you kind of tweak how you act just a bit depending on who you're with?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like you're putting on a slightly different hat for different people.
Exactly. It feels like performing sometimes, and, we all seem to do it. But it's not just about being fake, right? There's actually a whole area of study around this.
There is. It's called impression management. And it draws heavily on sociology, actually,
Yeah.
specifically the work of Erving Goffman. He had this idea he called the dramaturgical perspective.
Right, like life's a stage.
Precisely. Social interaction as theater. The sources you shared really let us dig into this.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then, to use these sources to really get under the hood of impression management. What is it really? Why do we do it? And where does it show up day to day?
And what strikes you right away from the sources is just how, well, everywhere it is, it's not always big, dramatic performances. Often it's subtle. The sources point out it's not just the information itself, but how you wrap it all up. Appearance, tone of voice, even those tiny facial expressions.
Wow, okay. Framing it that way makes it sound kind of exhausting.
It can feel that way.
But I assume the sources give reasons why we put in all this effort, specific motivations.
Absolutely. I mean, the obvious ones are there, getting a job, fitting in socially, sure, but your sources dive a bit deeper.
Like what?
Well, one interesting driver is self-enhancement, which isn't just about looking good to others. It's also about maintaining a consistent, positive self-image for yourself. Projecting that image helps reinforce your own sense of identity. It's kind of self-validating.
Ah, okay. So it's not just performative for the audience, it's partly for us too.
Right.
Interesting. What else did the sources bring up?
Social validation is a big one, obviously. Seeking approval, yeah, but the sources also link it to navigating social hierarchies.
Makes sense.
It's a tool for negotiating status, influence, sometimes without even saying anything explicitly. And another angle the sources mentioned, which is maybe less talked about, is using it to avoid bad stuff.
Avoiding bad stuff, like
Preventing conflict or sort of steering clear of awkward situations. Strategic self-presentation to keep things smooth.
Yeah, okay. That definitely rings true. And the sources broke down specific ways we do this, right? The tactics, beyond just, bragging.
Yes, and they offered some nuanced takes. For instance, ingratiation sucking up, basically.
Right.
It's not just empty flattery. One source talked about how it involves carefully adjusting what you say or do to align with what you think the other person values, but without being obviously manipulative. It's calibrated. And then there's supplication, acting helpless or dependent to get assistance.
Yeah.
The sources present it not just as weakness, but sometimes as a deliberate move.
Yeah.
Maybe to build closeness by showing vulnerability, or signal you're trustworthy because you admit you know help with something specific.
Huh. That's a different angle. It's not just, oh, I'm bad at computers. It's actually a social strategy.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the digital world. The sources are clear.
Mm.
This is where impression management has just exploded.
Oh, yeah. Social media, dating apps, those are definitely stages.
Meticulously curated front stages, as Goffman might call them.
I imagine the sources discuss the challenges there. It feels different online, maybe more pressure.
They did. One point raised was the increased need for consistency. It's hard to keep your work stage separate from your friend's stage when it might all be visible online.
Right, context collapse.
Yeah, and that can create new kinds of performance anxiety, the sources suggest. Pressure to be on and consistent everywhere.
Okay, but what about the flip side? The whole authenticity question must have come up in the sources. Does it make us feel fake?
That's a really important critique they explore. Goffman saw it as just part of the social fabric, but your sources definitely touch upon the psychological toll. Things like emotional labor overload, just the constant effort of managing how you appear and react. And they also link intense impression management to feelings of being a fraud or imposter syndrome, especially if there's a big disconnect between that front stage you're putting on and how you feel backstage.
So it's a powerful tool, maybe even necessary for getting by, but it's not without potential internal costs.
That seems to be a central tension in the material, yes.
Yeah.
Ultimately, managing impressions is fundamental. It's how we navigate different social situations, from meeting the boss to crafting that online bio.
And maybe the key takeaway is that it's not necessarily about being inauthentic all the time. It's more about understanding the expectations and the unspoken rules of all these different stages we find ourselves on.
Exactly. It's about skillful adaptation. And thinking about Goffman's front stage, backstage idea from the sources, maybe here's something for you, the listener, to reflect on. Think about where your front stage performance feels pretty easy, almost natural. And then think, is there a place where that gap between the front stage and how you genuinely feel backstage feels really wide? Just noticing where those lines fall for you can be quite revealing.